Hi, this is Sandy. This week we're working on paints and we've ordered 3 primary colors from Daniel Smith, and we talk about those 3 primary colors, but then we also talk about other 3 primary colors and what's the difference. So join me and we'll start on the color wheel, but we'll start it in a fun way. We have our 3 different paints. We've got Hansa Yellow Medium, Perylene Red, and French Ultramarine Blue. Daniel Smith has said that these are their primary colors. Now you know from grade school, in your early education with crayons, that primary colors, there's 3 of them. Secondary colors are made from the primary colors. The thing is, we can pick any blue, red, or yellow, and they're all primary colors. It doesn't really matter what the shades are. Why Daniel Smith picked these colors is because they're secondary colors. They have a mixture of the blue and the yellow, and their mixture makes a green. Now, if you didn't want to have to mix the green, you could just go pick up a tube of it, and it's undersea green. We know that these 2 colors will make undersea green. If I were to pick a different blue and a different yellow, it will make a different green. The only important thing here is that we know exactly what these are going to do. That does not prevent you from experimenting on your own. But before you start experimenting on your own, let's just start with their colors. Okay, if you ordered these colors, you have a liquid, sort of a cream, a lotion. And we can just squeeze a little bit out into a disposable palette. You could use an egg carton if you didn't want to buy anything. These little palettes are like 99 cents. Okay, then the Perylene Red is next, and I'm just going to squeeze some in here. And the last one is Ultramarine Blue. So Daniel Smith has determined that it's calling these 3 colors their primary colors, which that's fine with me. We know what they are. Now there's some terms that I want you to know. Number 1 is light fastness. If you look on the websites for these watercolors, you'll see the term light fastness. What that means is how long it's going to last in light. Some of them aren't very long, or they don't know they're going to last 100 years. These they do know they're going to last. Another term I want you to know is non-staining, or their stain. That means how easy they are to lift out after they're dry. So they have different categories that they're labeling on all of these. Then the last one is called granulating. Watercolor is made from minerals, rocks, and some of the minerals stay in the water, in the paint. And when it dries, you might get this right here. This is called granulating. Some watercolors aren't very granulating, and some are. So it's this one, if you want that granulation in your watercolors, that's the one you're going to have to pay attention to. Okay, let's get back to primary colors. This is Canson paper. It comes in a big sheet. Maybe we don't want to use a big sheet. Let's look at it and see how we can adapt it. I'm folding it in half and I'm creasing it. I could cut this with scissors. Something about watercolor paper, it always looks better if it's torn. So I'm folding it in half, and I'm folding it in half again. And when I get a nice crease going, I'm going to just give it a little tear. And I just blow on the edge of the paper. And then I just take and pull it. When it's done, I have a nice little edge that I can work with. Now, we're going to start out just working with the colors. I want you to see the difference on what they're going to do. I've got my water here. My water is from it's distilled water. I have a water softener. There's salt in my water that comes out of my faucet, so I have to use special water. Make sure you know what your home water is doing. Okay, the water that comes out of here, or the paint that comes out of here, out of these tubes, is very strong. So when we use it, we have to still put water in it. This is called watercolor for a reason. The color works best with water. Okay, so I'm going to just paint a strip of yellow and rinse my brush out, come over here, get some red, and I'm going to paint a strip of red. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush out. Now I'm just going to put water in and let them mix. If I tip my paper, the colors are going to mix automatically. I want you to see the difference between doing this and getting your color and mixing your color. So that's one way. Now, I've also got my paint tray right here. And this is my water tray. You don't have to do this. This works for me. I've got 4 trays of water. I'm going to keep the reds in this one when I rinse my brush. I'm going to keep the yellows in this one when I rinse my brush. I'm going to keep my blues in this one because I know that I don't want to get them crossed. Then I'm going to keep some plain water. That way I know I always have clean water that I'm going to be painting with. So I'm going to put this aside. I've just now made red water. Okay, we can see this mixing. Now, I want some clean water in my brush, and I'm going to come down here. I'm going to grab some yellow, and I'm going to put it in this tray back here. This is not paint, it's water with some paint in it. I don't want straight paint in this. Okay, I'm going to rinse in my yellow. Come out, and I'm going to catch a little bit of red with the water in it. I don't want into that paint. Just got a little bit of red with water. Okay, now I have made orange. I can put that strip right here. I'm going to encourage this to run down here by lifting the paper up and letting it run. Same thing. Okay, so now I've got my primary colors, yellow and red, and I've got my secondary color that I just made. Now, we aren't quite sure that we want to do this every time. This is when you would go and buy a tube of paint. Otherwise, you've got it. You only need 3 tubes of paint. Okay, while we're doing this, I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to draw a line along the bottom here. color it in. We're going to talk about another term here. Transparent and opaque. We all know what transparent is. Transparent, you can look out the window and you can see through the glass. That's transparent. You can see through it. Opaque is you can't see through it. So if you're looking out that window and you see the sash of the window, that's opaque. You can't see through that. Watercolor comes in transparent, in varying degrees of transparent, and in varying degrees of opaque. So I'm going to rinse my brush, make sure it's clean. I'm going to go into this yellow, and this is the water. I'm not going into that pile of yellow color. And I'm going to just paint over this line. Rinse that brush, because now I don't want to make orange. I'm going to go into that red water just to make sure I've got red on it. And I'm not going into the paint, I'm just going into the water next to it. And I'm going to put that over that black line. We're going to ignore that for a while. We'll come back to it. Okay, rinse your brush. And this time I want some clean water, and I want to get it in this blue area over here. Just mix it up a little bit, get it a little bit liquid, and you can tell over here that this is more water than this is. That's what I want. Rinse that brush off in my blue water. Now I'm going to go to my clean water, and I'm going to get some more water over here in this red. The reason I didn't go to the red water is because that red water has a little bit of yellow in it. Okay, now I've got some water in there. Rinse that out of my brush, get some clean water, go to the yellow. I just need some more very liquid yellow. Okay, now I'm rinsing that out. So I like what I did. I got yellow and red, and I made orange. Let's try yellow and blue. The way I'm doing it, I'm putting the yellow down, and I'm not going to go all the way. I'm only going halfway. I'm going to go to the blue. Put the blue at the other end. If it seems too light, like that seems too light, I'm going to just mix a little more blue into that. That's better. Let's get some more in there. If you make it too watery, you don't get big color, and I want some big color in here. Okay, here we go. Up I go, and I'm going to just stop when I hit that yellow. Okay. Rinse that brush out in your blue water. Lift that up. Let it run back down. And you're going to start seeing green. Now we're going to let it sit now, and we're going to let it mix. We're not going to manipulate this in any way. Okay, now I'm going to get some clean water, go into my yellow, put it in a bowl, one of these little bowls back here. That's why I say an egg carton. That's not cardboard, but it's styrofoam type egg carton would work too. I'm going to get some blue in here. Not as much blue, because blue is a really strong color. So we're just going to put a little bit of blue in there, not a whole lot. All right. Now I'm going to paint that. Rinse that brush. You can rinse that one in the blue water too. I'm going to pick up some of this blue. I'm going to run it down here like this. We'll analyze that later. Okay, this one made this orange. So I know this is going to make that green. All right, let's go into the blue now. Add a little more pigment to this. When I say pigment, I mean the color that comes straight out of that tube. And I'm going to put it up here at the top. Rinse my brush. Get some of that red. Go from the other end up, and where it meets, stop. And I can then make it run back and forth. Then I'm going to let it sit. Now I've got some red in this brush, so I'm going to put some red right there. Rinse my brush. I rinsed it in the red. Now I'm going to go over to my clean water. Get some blue. Might need a little more blue than that. Okay, now I'm going to take this that I made and I'm going to paint it. And that's purple. Okay, now I could even paint this one over here like that. Now I've got 3 separate colors mixed. This is my primary colors. And this is my secondary colors. It doesn't really matter which green, blue, or red you use. But what does matter is that you know what the colors that they're going to make are. Okay, this is almost ready to analyze. If you look at these colors down here on top of this black line after they're dry, you're going to see that you can sort of see a little bit of yellow on top of there. And you can see quite a bit of red on top of that black line. What you can't see is the blue on top of that black line. That's telling me that the red and the yellow are sort of opaque, sort of transparent. They aren't truly opaque where you can't see through them, but the fact that I can see a yellow on top of this black tells me that it isn't a truly transparent color like this blue is. Now, where is that going to matter? If I were to take, and we're just going to paint a blue here. Let it do its own thing, and we're going to have to let it dry. Then I'm going to paint a yellow. And then I'm going to paint a red. We are learning our colors. We're learning what happens. Okay, these have to dry for us to do the next step on those. Let's go ahead and let's look at these. They're dry. We can figure out what kind of stain this has just by rubbing across it. Is it easy to lift? It's pretty easy. Let's see what the yellow does. Okay, the yellow's not coming up quite as well as that red did, which tells me that this orange is going to come up so-so. Let's look at that blue. It is dry. Ooh, that blue wants to come straight up. Which means, once again, that green's going to get kind of iffy how much you're going to get up. It's going to stain a little bit. All right. Now, I want to pay attention to some other things. You see the color I mixed. Do you see the little granules in here? That means that it happened here and here. That means that this blue is granulating because this red and this yellow, it's a flat color. So now I know that when I do this, I'm going to get wonderful patterns when the colors mix. I don't get the same beautiful granules when I mix the colors. It isn't quite the same. It's a little bit different. So now I've got to take that into consideration when I'm painting. Okay, now I want to look at the color itself. If you look at this color here, it's probably more blue than yellow. So it's not really real green, but I know that's green. My eye is telling my brain that's green. This one, I don't need to interpret it. It's there. Nothing is going to change it. What about this one right here? Look at the purples that we got. All of the different purples. We didn't get that many different purples here. We just got one flat purple. That's telling me that in watercolor, it's almost better to let the watercolors do the mixing themselves. You don't have as much control, but you do have a much more interesting picture. Okay, so we know that the blue is opaque or is transparent, and the yellow is probably the most opaque there is. What that's going to do is there's certain parts of our painting that we will put a glaze on top of another color. We want to see, in a glaze, we want to see the color underneath it. We don't want to see the color on top of it. That's telling me that, this is wet, so we'll give it a couple more minutes to dry, that if I were to put yellow on top of this blue, I might not see the blue coming up from underneath it. But we're going to try that in a little bit because I'm going to put this aside. Now you're thinking, and just what am I going to do when I get my colors? Well, I took the same watercolor paper there and I mixed it myself. I would take, I'm going to get a new piece of watercolor paper here. I would take this yellow. I'm going to wipe this one yellow tray out right there. Get rid of that orange. Okay, so I would take a yellow and I would get it in here. Remember our value charts that we would do in pencils, and we would make it darker and darker. I'm going to put a little more water in here. Okay, so I could take and I could make my own chart here, and I could cut it apart or not. It doesn't really matter if I cut it apart. But I'm going to make a line. Like that. Now I'm going to take that yellow and I'm going to paint the yellow. Now I really don't want these to mix. I'm rinsing that yellow out and I'm going to add one little drop of red. One little drop. I'm going to paint that. A little bit different. Rinse that yellow out of there. Now I'm going to grab some more red. So I'm going to add another drop of red to it. And I'm going to paint. That looks pretty good. I'm going to rinse that out because I want to be in control of how much red I see. I'm going to add another drop of red. Ooh, I'm really getting drops of or getting orange now. Okay. Rinse that out of there. Getting low on my red, so I've got to do this a little bit differently. And I'm going to add another drop of red. See, just that one drop of red is all I added. There it goes. Okay. Let's get some more red in here. Add another drop of red. And add another drop of red. So that by the end, by the time we are down to the bottom, we now almost have plain old red. This is showing me all the different ways, all the different colors that I can get from this red and this yellow. In order to do a successful watercolor, you have to know what your colors are going to do. Happy accidents happen, but happy accidents happen best when we sort of know what path we're on. So you really need to do these little color charts for yourself with the colors that you are using. It doesn't have to be Daniel Smith's colors of these three primaries. It can be coral for the red. It could be yellow medium, cad medium for the red or for the yellow. And it could be phthalo blue for the blue. Those three colors are the colors that you use. You know what's going to happen to them. Now you're thinking, I want to paint a picture. First, before you paint a picture, you have to know what the colors are going to do. So my suggestion here is to do the washes. There's a book, Jean Haynes wrote it, and it's Paint Yourself Positive. And she does washes, and she lets you play with color. And you put the color down, but you know, this color is not going to do anything unless we add water. So we keep adding water. And we keep it nice and wet. And then we're going to add some water down on this end. Know what your color is going to do. Have fun with your colors. And I'm just adding water. Now, when I get to this point right here, I'm going to say, all right, you guys, I want you to play. Then I'm going to lift it up. And mind you, this is on the inexpensive paper that you get at your hobby store. I'm not using my expensive paper here. Okay, you see what it's going to do? You like it? It's making you happy? Maybe you're thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm going to go and I'm going to say, okay, here, we need a couple red drops right here. That works. And then I'm going to look for the sheen when it's not real wet is when it's ready. If it's got puddles, it's not ready. And I'm going to say to myself, oh, I bet if I add a little bit of salt, it might look really neat. So I'm going to add just a couple of flakes of salt here and there, and I'm going to let it dry. This is learning. This is having fun. You don't have to create a picture. You just have to enjoy what's happening. Now, if you get adventurous and you say, okay, well, I can do that. I'm going to add blue. You might not be happy with it because blue and orange make brown. And red and green make brown. So then you start getting browns in here and you think, how do I do this? How can I do this? Well, let's first get to know what happens when we do two colors. Let's enjoy what's happening with two colors. How much color do I need to get those two colors to work? All right, let's go back here. This is dry now. And we're going to put a glaze on top of it. I'm going to take some of this red. It's watered down a little bit. I don't want flat, straight color because I want this to be a glaze that I can see through. I'm going to put it over here like that. Okay, keep that glaze. And I'm going to put it over here like that. I can even glaze on top of my red. Rinse the red out. I'm going to pick up some of this blue. And I'm going to glaze. And I'm going to glaze over all three colors. Remember, the point of a glaze is to see through to the layers below it. Okay, now I've got yellow. If I don't press down on that paint, I don't have to worry about the red coming up. But if I were to really press down on that paint like that, that red is going to move. So a light little press is all it needs. We're going to let that dry and we're going to look at it. And we're going to see what it looks like to be able to glaze over a color. Am I getting purple? Yeah, I did. I got purple. Am I getting green? You know, I really think I got yellow because that yellow's sitting on top of there. Here I'm starting to get some greens because that transparent blue is letting me see the yellow underneath it. So, have fun with your primary colors. Don't worry about warm colors and cool colors. Not yet. Worry about what happens when you mix those. Don't worry about creating a masterpiece or painting a boat or painting a tree. Just paint a piece of paper. Okay, next week we're going to work on our secondary colors.